thanks for tuning in to Power Athlete Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, Ron McKeefery is back. If you missed him the first time, tune in this week to hear him drop knowledge from his years of experience at the collegiate and professional level. For being named Collegiate Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year twice, Ron's approach is relatively simple and highly effective. His advice ranges from the complexities of selecting the right coaches to hire to surviving as an intern. Surviving can eventually translate to thriving if you recognize your role at every stage of the game. Coach McKeefery has recently become the Vice President of Performance and Education of Play. Not only that, he's kicking off a clinic series which he discusses in detail on today's show. His book, CEO Strength Coach, is an excellent stepping stone to surviving the S&C struggle and getting to know what it took to make Coach Ron McKeefery the success you see today. In his words, shut your mouth, open your ears, then ask a million questions, and you end up getting to a point where you might actually have an original thought. Well, it might make for a lengthy tattoo, but it certainly is a good life mantra. This is episode 194.
Power Athlete Nation, what is up? You've got Luke and John in Lakeway, Texas, sweating it up after some condo at Harry Shaw's gym, reporting live. And Tex, you are in H-Town?
Houston, Clutch City, yeah.
Oh yeah, I gotta remember that. Clutch City, Hill Country, and then and we have Ron McKeefery, it's a repeat veteran, repeat guest. Ron McKeefery's coming in, CEO Strength Coach. What's going on, Ron? And we got in kind of a shift in career path since we've last talked, right? I know
yeah.
Connected, but you're working with Play now, aren't you?
I am. I'm the. I came on as their Vice President of Performance and Education.
And for those of you guys that don't know, Play is probably the premier maker of flooring for gyms. And any guys that ever been to super high-end gyms like, the new Sornex place or Gold's Gym or any, major collegiate strength conditioning program, the bitchin' floors that, don't have seams and look like they actually are carpet or even something nicer, those are usually Play floors. So,
well,
stuff.
Tex, do you know offhand the episode number that Ron was last on?
1 second. Keep stalling.
Anyways, so I guess, Ron, here's what I want to do. Let's say people are new listeners. They don't know who you are. Maybe give them the 2-minute abridged version, and then we'll reference if they want to learn more about you, man, they should just go back and, do the legwork, I think, and check out this episode.
No doubt. Yeah, guys, I've been a strength coach for over 20 years, worked in multiple NFL programs, high-level college athletics, and most recently I was with the Eastern Michigan University when we last talked, and I was going on year three, almost year 4 of being away from my family from when I was let go at Tennessee with the coaching staff. I went to Cincinnati Bengals, went to Eastern Michigan, and ultimately I was 3.5 years away from my family, and so this opportunity with Play presented itself to where I continue to be a coach. But I get the opportunity to coach coaches and make a global impact and affect more than 105 guys each year and each day. And so I thought that was just a great opportunity for growth for me, and real excited about my current role.
Sounds like you and AA kind of found a similar deal, him working for Sornex and then you with Play, and kind of a symbiotic relationship. I mean, it's pretty interesting that you have these, major kind of equipment providers getting into the education market and working with established strength conditioning coaches that can go in and not only talk intelligently about a program, but also talk about equipment and bring in the right type of deal. Because, after going to Sornex, I realized that the time and money and effort put in by Division I programs into terms of recruiting and how to, and build these. And you're seeing them firsthand, but these, I was joking to call them the Palace of Versailles. They obviously, right. They built the Palace of Versailles as this, impressive thing for them to, sell the French culture. And this is what we can do. And we're this, global market. And, in a sense, that's kind of what these colleges are doing to really wow these, almost naive 18-year-old kids that walk in and they're like, oh my God, sure, you'll be a starter next year and this will be your weight room. And you know what, that shit's impressive. I go back to my own, personal experiences and, going to, sitting with Boyd Epley, because I took a trip to Nebraska, they offered me a scholarship, and sitting with Boyd Epley up in his command center and room and literally being like, holy shit, this is amazing. If this wasn't in Lincoln, Nebraska, I would totally come here. and then seeing the crappy gym that was Cal Berkeley's deal, and then seeing it now, and it's pretty impressive, I guess, to think about not only the last 20 years, but to think that like schools are putting this much time and effort and money and just resources into building these facilities. It's killer. I wish I was 18 years old again.
No doubt. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things to dig in there. I mean, one being, just like Aaron, as being in this business for 20 plus years, and there's a mortality in it, in terms of how long you can coach and how long you can put in a 13, 14-hour day and be the husband and father that you want to be. And ultimately, for me, that's number one, and number two is to be a best husband and be a best father, and then be a great coach. And I wasn't able to look myself in the mirror with my kids all going into high school now and say that I'm being the best father and husband I could be. And so that allowed me to do this. And content marketing, like you said, right now is that's the best form of marketing. When people know, like, and trust you, they buy from you, and I have zero sales responsibilities. I couldn't even tell you necessarily the differences in the products that we have. But my role is really broken into kind of three categories. It's one, it's being an ambassador for the company and speaking and writing and doing the things that I do. And that was appealing to me because, from adopting kids internationally, from coaching in NFL Europe, from, just being, traveling the world, speaking, I want to make, I realized how big this planet is, and how small it can be at the same time. And I wanted to have a global impact on coaches and athletes. So that was appealing to me. The second category is this education category, which I've routinely spoken, throughout my entire career, mostly because it was forced continue education for me. It was an opportunity for me to go out and learn at the same time as I was sharing things that I'd learned from others. And, so taking on the Play Summits and putting on those events and growing it from 3, that we had last year to 8 events this year was big. And then there's the performance piece. And we're still trying to figure out what that is, whether or not that's facilities and consulting and combine prep and vet training, things like that. But that's where I'm headed in terms of working with some high-level athletes in those arenas.
Nice. So almost kind of similar to what, there's different people, obviously or Athletes Performance and Exos and, I don't know who else is doing it. I know is trying to do a little bit of stuff out here, but really building those centers of excellence, which I think is, really Athletes Performance did it in the beginning and, where they would, create these, centers of excellence and athletes would come in to train. I always thought that was a kind of a genius idea, and the fact that if you can bring in the right type of atmosphere and create the right deal, and bring in the right people, and I know when I trained out Athletes Performance, I kind of deviated a little bit from what they wanted to do. They were more interested in working with a guy to teach him how to activate his core than actually get him to bang some heavy fucking weights. And with Verstegen, I'm like, dude, you guys have come 3-6 weeks, and you're working on activation and Busu ball balancing instead of fucking putting a heavy bar. Well, he's not ready to train. I'm like, this dude's going back to play in the NFL.
Right.
I'm like, dude, what confidence is bouncing on a Busu ball opposed from getting underneath and banging weights? And then we got into an argument. I remember about the vertical jump where you attach the bands to the hips is the
Vertimax.
Yeah, the Vertimax.
Yeah. That
the Vertimax was better than actually heavy power cleans or dynamic pulls. I remember at that point I was like, dude, we're not going to talk about this philosophy anymore. So, it's, it's killer to see how far things have come. But, man, if you guys do something like that, I think that's a home run.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the mission of what Play is trying to do. Play obviously has been a flooring company, like you mentioned, but Brett, the owner, has always viewed it as a performance brand, so we have, trying to create some different categories, Play Performance being one of those, which is what I'm running as a division. And, and obviously for me, it's important that we blur those lines. And there's, like you had said, with Mark and some of the early kind of sports performance coaches, there was this clear division between strength coaches and performance coaches. And it was almost like this religious kind of fervor,
Sure.
and with me coming on and really trying to help blend those lines and have some crossover, where, coaches that I developed, which I've done for my whole career, having coaches I developed go back and forth between the two, between these facilities, between the teams that I'm working with and things along those lines. hopefully we can do that and accomplish that mission.
Sounds good.
And you know what's nice about the position you're in, Ron, is like, and we were talking a little bit before the show about some of the guys out here in Austin. Is I think a popular, or what's causing a lot of growth with a lot of companies is just authenticity, right? So when a guy like you who's empowered to be an ambassador for the brand doesn't have to have a sales tactic or anything like that, it breeds an authentic message to the guy who has the feet on the street, you know?
Right. No doubt. Well, I mean, you know, and obviously I wouldn't have took the job if I didn't believe in the product. I mean, it was, you know, when you dig into it, it's not even close. It's not even close to the competitors, but at the same time, that makes it easy then, because then you just go in and it's whether or not you want to be a part of it or not. You know, if you want that product, it's great. But, you know, we get to go in. My role is basically simply to go in and talk shop and see where I can be of service as a resource, as a mentor, as a coach. And ultimately that's what I got into this business to do, is to create impact, not just in athletes, but in the people that I surround myself with.
And I guess, you know, just to bridge the gap between what we were talking about before the show is like, we have the same mission, right? We want to be, we're a global company. We don't see ourselves as anything less. And, you know, why are some of the guys coming out here? I mean, you know, in terms of the fitness world or training world, I think it lowers an administrative barrier that gets tied up, because we're a relatively small team, and I think a lot of these shops are. So if you have 2 or 3 resources tied up in just dealing with the California Franchise State Tax Board on a fucking monthly basis, you're not going to get anything done. You know, so like,
you learned how to do that in exercise science class?
This was like our daily laugh. Like at least once a month, we would get a bill from the California State Franchise Tax Board that we had no idea what it was for. And I would call the accountant, and literally I'd be like, "Hey, we got another bill." She'd be like, "Just pay it." I'm like, "Don't we like foresee all this stuff? Like, why are we getting these bills?" She's like, "Just pay it. Take a picture, send it to me. I'll go out and figure out whether or not we can get your money back." And I'm like, "This is crazy!" Like every month, and it was like these erroneous. I'm like, these people are too much, dude. I was like, you know, and I think the other thing too, at least for us, is we wanted the ability to create a much bigger presence in a bigger space and do some things. And just in Orange County, it's you know, space is such a commodity, right, that, you know, all of a sudden you're renting these like little industrial park spots, and you're, you know, dropping a couple grand a month, and you're like, dude, this is all we're getting, you know. And you know, so for us, we just wanted to, you know, it's time for a move. And you know, me especially, I just wanted a better experience for my wife and kids and my family, more so than, you know, being underneath John Wayne's you know, flight path with 300 planes plus a day. I mean, you know, people don't realize that, you know, the nicest part of, or one of the nicest parts of all of Orange County is Newport Beach. Right. It's literally right underneath John Wayne. So like we would sit in our backyard and we'd be like, "Oh, this is great. Oh, wow, we're like Southwest Airlines again," you know, and literally come and buzz us. And like after a while you don't notice. But then all of a sudden you move to someplace like Texas where it's really quiet, and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh shit, I did hear that all the time." So I mean, it was really just nice, and it was a great opportunity. And that's awesome. At this point, yeah, we were like, "Fucking, let's go." And you know, and then the funny part is when you get out and tell people, they'll be like, "You guys, wait a minute, you moved from Newport Beach? That's not like the best place in the world." And I'm like, "Maybe for a time." And you know, and then
it's all perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And like Luke and I were laughing a little bit. I mean, just in the 3 weeks we've been out here, we've probably met more people and done more things than we had in the end, you know, all the years we were in Orange County. Yeah.
And I don't know what it is, if it's the air, if it's the water, but people are just more went by Wes's shop and just go to check it out. And then Wes ends up coming up from the back room and just gives us a fucking like an hour of our time. And I'm like, "Dude, John, you got to go check it out." And then John swings by, they spend, you know, 90 minutes just chatting it up. And honestly, talk about, it's just the people we've met here have been an open book, whereas previous interactions have kind of been guarded and closed, you know. And you know, I think that I don't know what the common appeal is, but together we can fucking conquer something great. And I think that it's just been a telling experience the past couple of weeks. And I mean, unbeknownst to us, funny thing about John's house in an undisclosed location of Texas is you drive down this, like, you know, 300-400 meter driveway, and it's like all through the shanty town with billy goats and roosters, and like John's next door neighbor is a fucking literal and figurative gold mine. I mean, Mr. P is like runs this area, and he's just a wealth of knowledge. It's like,
yeah, he's an interesting dude. He's 87. His mother owned most of the area. His family owned like 700 acres from like all of like Bee Cave and like this part of West Austin, and so And like, you know, she was born on the land in like the 1800s, and I think he was born in the 30s or something. I mean
Wow.
it works. And so he's lived on this land like his entire life, and has, you know, systematically gone through and sold off pieces and, you know, developed and done some stuff. And like, it was pretty funny. He has a standing poker game on Wednesday nights he invited me to. And I'm just going to give anybody listening to, if an 87-year-old man has a 65-year standing poker game,
Yeah.
you to come.
You don't go.
Well, no, just show up and watch. That's all I did. I didn't bring any
Or
money.
be prepared to lose your money.
Yeah. I just walked in. He's like, "Hey, you gonna play?" I'm like, "No, I just came here to watch, sir. I'm just gonna hang out right here and to see what happens. I'm just gonna look for people's personality and the ebb and flow." That old man who is supposedly legally blind, he absolutely took every nickel off of everybody sitting in that field and couldn't see a single card. And so I'm sitting there, and I was like, "Man, we need to pack him up and take him to Vegas." At which point he takes off his wristwatch and throws it to me, and I pick it up and I look at the back, and it's a gold watch, and it says a 1981 World Series of Poker champion. And I was like, so I slide it back to him, and I jump on my phone. There was some dude named like Bob Unger won that. So I was like, "Who's Bob Unger?" He's like, "I won that from him in a card game." I was like, so the dude who won the 1981 World Championship of Poker bet his watch at a card game, and you took it off.
Got it down to his watch.
Yeah, he's like, yeah. I mean, it's just a funny old dude, but
Well,
it's been hilarious, and he'll periodically call me and you know, like give me these little tidbits of information about things, and he's always like,
awesome.
Yeah, he'll be like, you know, "I'm sure you know a lot of things, but you know, I'm going to give you little tidbits of information, use them or discard them, whatever it is." And he literally will tell me some hilarious stuff. He called me the other day and said, "I got a fella coming by, wants to sell me a truck. I want you to come over and look at it." And I was like, "I'm over at the store picking up some batteries." He's like, "Well, if you swing on by, come on in." And so I drive by, I didn't see anybody out there, so I went home, and he called me a minute later, and he's like, you know, "Hey, that fella came by with that truck." I'm like, "Oh yeah, did you get it?" He's like, well, guess what kind of truck it was?" I'm like, "I don't know, like pickup or something. I mean, who knows?"
Right.
He said, "No, it was a fire truck. He bought a fire truck, and he wanted to sell me a fire truck." And I was like, "Why'd you buy it?" He's like, "What the fuck's an 87-year-old man going to do with a fucking fire truck?" And he like a deep Southern accent. And I was like, "So you didn't buy the fire truck?" He was like, "Hell no, I'll call you later." And he like hung up on me. He's just a funny old man, like just hilarious in terms of like not only perspective, but he was like raised his own strain of roosters and was like one of like the top strains of cockfighting in like the world, and would sell roosters all over the world, and like has this whole like folklore of roosters. And I was like, "How the hell did you get into roosters?" And he like looked at me, he's like, "You realize that like there wasn't TV or internet or even books or anything, so there was only a couple things to do. You either work or you drank," and I didn't drink. So I worked. And he's like, "Or we gambled." And he's like, "And the only gambling really here in Austin was you know, illegal card games, or you fought roosters, which were legal. And so everybody who did anything would fought roosters, and it was purely entertainment."
Wow.
And it's just it's so funny. Like he's sitting there, like, you know, like talking to my like 5-year-old daughters, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this old man. Well, he you know, he's super nice to them, and they like always like kind of like they'll be like, "Oh, we drew Mr. Perkins some pictures today," and they'll go give him some stuff, and he's always so sweet with them, really nice. But it's just it's a good like, I hope they grow up and they'll tell stories about their old man this old man who was a neighbor, who's you know, like this kind of a wild, like he's got these crazy billy goats, and he's got these big ass dogs that like are the complete savages, that like it's typical what you'd expect for Texas. So I'm stoked that they got this experience.
That's awesome. Well, this all stemmed from me asking the question, why Austin?
The whole reason that we came to Austin really was in 1999, my rookie year in the NFL. My agent played at UT and then had a house here in Bee Cave, and so I would come out and visit him, and we went out to like the Hamilton Pool Reserve and really kind of hung out in this area for a couple of years. And I always remember thinking, like, if I was ever going to live in Texas, I like this area. And I've been to Dallas and Houston and some other places. And then a couple of years ago, my wife and I, one of her friends is from Austin. We came out and visited her over New Year's, and we like, you know, went to all the, you know, the places that I had been, you know, years previous. And we just kind of liked the vibe. And our idea was that we wanted to buy a house here or some land and like maybe build a second home. And so we'd been out here for like 2 years. We'd periodically come out, or if we had any chance to come out to Austin, we'd come out and hang out here and, you know, rent a place. And we stayed out at like different resorts and would just, you know, go out and look at land. And we found some really killer land plots. And then we just had an opportunity to sell our house in Newport Beach. I mean, this dude in a matte black convertible Lamborghini wanted it more than us. And so the guy bought our home, and we were out 30 days later and started looking for a place, and we were just going to buy some land and rent a place and build it. And then we found this place. And so we made them an offer they couldn't refuse, and they closed. And about 9 days later, we were out here. So it was more just kind of opportunity presented itself, and we liked the area. And, the one thing that I'm big on is, coming from California is always like water. And I know this is kind of strange, but like, I like to see water on, and that was my deal. It's like, there's got to be some form of river or some like creek, or there's got to be water on the property. And a big thing I wanted to own both sides of the creek, because I didn't want anybody to be able to like, hey, this is what you can and can't do. Because after coming from Newport Beach, where you have to ask permission to do everything. So
Right.
I just wanted a little bit of freedom to be able to do what we wanted. And this property popped up, and it was a new house, and 16 acres, and owned a river with both sides, and had all the prerequisites we were looking for. And for the most part, it was kind of nondescript off the road. It was pretty close to where we wanted to be. And, there were some good schools in the area. And, Lake Travis has got a pretty good football program if my son ever wanted to play, and had the opportunity to be able to build an office and put a gym up on the property and not have to go rent anything. So it's just kind of like, as we were going through it, it was just like clicking all of these boxes.
Sweet.
And then all of a sudden we were like, what are we waiting for? Let's go. So we pulled the trigger and told Luke, and Luke's like, fuck yes. I'm glad to get out of here. I mean, I always joke that for these guys especially, I don't think I've seen a home in Costa Mesa, Newport Beach under $800,000.
Right.
So for these guys buying a house, you got to make some serious jack, you can make good money, but even having the down payment. So we were just looking for some good opportunity, and I think we found a pretty cool spot thus far. So we were excited. Yeah, no, it should turn out pretty neat if we can get it all set up. It just takes a little bit of time, and I'm impatient, but and I think too, and Ron, you know this, like you've lived in one place for a while, and then all of a sudden you get a chance to go someplace new, and it kind of adds and invigorates you a little bit. And
new adventure.
Yeah, I got the opportunity. I went to Berkeley, and then went to Philly, and then I lived in Florida, went to Kansas City, and then lived in different places. And I always liked the ability to be able to move and see new things, and get new perspective. And I think after being in California for almost 9-10 years straight, I was like, man, it's time to pack up and try something new.
I hear that. I don't know if you could pay me enough to live in California, to be honest with you. I ain't gonna lie to you. It's beautiful, but it's traffic alone would keep going out there.
Yeah, but you could spend a long weekend there.
I could definitely spend a long weekend.
So when I lived in I was living in Newport Beach, and I was training in Carson at Athletes Performance. And so anybody that knows that between Orange County and Carson is on the 405, which means wherever you got to go, it's going to take 4 or 5 hours. And I like that. So I had to train at 9. So I would leave the house by like 6:45 or 7, because it would either take me 30 minutes or 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And so I got to the point where I literally I had a pretty tricked out Suzuki Hayabusa motorcycle, and I would literally get on the bike and I would lane split that thing up to Carson every day. And I remember Verstegen saw me pull in, and he's like, "Are you fucking serious?" And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You drive a fucking 1300cc fucking race bike up here?" I'm like, "Dude, that's how you got to ride this thing." And I remember thinking, like, the fact that I have to fucking lane split just to make it here in 40 minutes is insane. And at that point I was like, you know what, like, this is too much. But it's pretty interesting, just the traffic and the amount of people. And even in the last 5 years, how many people have moved to Orange County is just like, it's insane. Like I figured with the drought and all that, people would be slowing down. Now it just seems like more people are coming.
Yeah, they're putting up more, there's no increased or improved infrastructure in terms of like lanes or highways. And just last year alone, they put in like something like 100,000 homes in just in Newport Beach.
Wow. Yeah, so there was between another big one was between where Luke and I lived, like our area, and where we worked at Power Athlete. They built, I think, 750 condos, and it was a one single 2-lane road, and they basically like built 750 condos, and they were in the process of building, I think, another 1,500.
Wow.
So like, just in our 3 miles, they were adding over what's that? Like, some crazy, like 50 domiciles or something. And we were like, Luke's like, dude, traffic's terrible. What's it going to look like? I'm like, man, it might be time to get out of this place, dude. So that was kind of our big spur. We were just like, because I think I lived 3.5 miles from work, and it was on an average of 17 to 20 minute commute.
Now you get to walk right out your back door, go right to work.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Just
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, to hear birds chirp and see animals, and like I remember we looked out in the paddock one morning and there was like 50 deer, and my daughter were like, "What are those? Are those dogs?" I'm like, "No, it's deer." And I realized how like disconnected they were in terms of like nature and things. Like they're running around barefoot, and like one of my daughters stepped in like a red anthill, and she was like, "Ah!" And I was like that, and I'm like, this is a great way to learn these tricks. I'm like, you guys are used to running around. I'm like, yeah, exactly. So now they have like boots they put on when they go run around outside, and they were like, we're not going to let those ants get us. And I'm like, just the practical learning of like, the country living is good, and it's fresh air. I mean, which is kind of strange. Luke's like, what's that smell? I'm like, I think that's non-pollution. It's like, that's fucking crazy. I'm like, I know, dude. It's like or the other one too, and sorry, this will be my last little compare and contrast, but I didn't realize the light signature that living in Orange County in a major city is associated with. So like at 6 a.m. when I would get up, it was like, the sun would be coming up, but it'd already kind of be glowing in light.
Right.
And like you don't realize like you have thousands of homes and cars and street lights and airport and all that give off just even a little bit this light signature, and then it grows into this big signature.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden there is no light signature. All of a sudden,
pitch black.
Yeah, I mean, until the sun comes up, there's nothing, and then like as the sun comes up, it gets light. But like unless there's a full moon, there's zero light signature. Like you can't see like a foot in front of you. So I mean, it's kind of interesting in that perspective.
Just make sure you take a shotgun to the freaking swimming hole.
Yeah, no, I got to go pick up these little. They have these little snake charmers, these little like 410 shotguns that are like single shots that like little kids can have and parents I guess use. Yeah, I mean our stuff would be like, I'm gonna need that full auto, fucking 7.6 kill everything. My wife's like, why is that thing on a tripod? I'm like, don't worry about, there's snakes down there. So yeah, it's yeah, no, it should be a cool experience. And, one, I hope that, in 10 years, my kids are like, I can't believe we left Newport Beach. That place was fucking the best with the OC. And I'll be like, God damn it. Go to college. Get the fuck out of here. But I hope hopefully they understand the appreciation of it.
No doubt.
Well, let's shift gears. Let's pivot.
Yeah.
Tex, go.
All right. So one of the topics I want to get your and John's perspective on, Ron, is the incident in Oregon. So strength and conditioning coach puts the football team during January through a workout, and then all of a sudden it's this high intensity workout. ESPN's reporting on it, all this crazy stuff. Strength coach suspended, and they're just vilifying the workout. However, what we need to understand is also the time of year. This is a brand new head football coach, so he brought in a new strength staff. So This is several things. I don't know if they're trying to set the tone. It's a new system. And we also need to factor in like the age of the athletes. So how the media perspective right now is just intense workout. There's a lot of things that we need to really factor in and bring to the table here. So I thought this would be a really good conversation for all of our listeners.
Absolutely. So
especially the new football coach part. So Ron, you've been to several different programs. You're even the South Florida alum, which this head coach is coming from. So I don't know if you had an opportunity to read up on the event or can provide any insight, and we can start this conversation.
Yeah, actually, I'd love to get John's perspective as well, but well, I'll tell you what, John wants to go first. I want to get yours first.
Well, okay. My perspective is, and people were outraged. They were, I think it was like, they were making them do like, I don't know, what was it, an hour of push-ups and burpees or something? These guys got some sick. When people asked me, they seemed so outraged, and I was like, dude, these kids should have shown up in shape. I mean, that's really like my deal. And like, every strength coach, everybody that's ever played football knows that when you show up after winter break, the strength coach obviously gives you his training program, and they always tell you when you go home for winter break, make sure you train, because if you don't, you're going to be in trouble, because we're going to come back and it's not going to be easy. We got to get right into winter conditioning, and we're going to know who's ready and who's not. And like, we used to have those same deal. We used to do the Nebraska circuits. We came back, and that was Todd Rice's deal. We're going to do the Nebraska circuits, the metabolic conditioning cycles, and we're going to see who's shape and who's not. And, and it's ugly. People are going to throw up, or we even did the old school mat drills, as I'm sure you guys have done. And all that stuff is about building toughness and everything. And I literally trained every winter conditioning because I didn't want to be the dude that was the guy throwing up or looking like an asshole or gets, something happens. And you know what? Like, that was personal deal, but also which I think about now is also survival, that, these guys are getting paid to be there, and people are like, oh, these kids. And I'm like, dude, these aren't kids. These are grown men playing at a Division I school that's a top 10 potential national championship school that are getting a very nice gift of getting to go to college and play at the highest level, potentially go play in the NFL. And those dudes show up, and I'm like, let's say you got 150 kids on that roster. 3 of those kids end up, something bad ends up happening to them. Why was it? Were they out of shape? Were they, how did it all happen? And they were like, oh, they did an hour of burpees and push-ups. And I'm like, really? Only an hour, huh? And then the story I related was Tom Cable was my offensive line coach in college, and I got into a fist fight in practice. And he got pissed, and because I guess we had gotten lectures about fighting, and we don't want any fights, and I basically fucking stomped this kid. And so he tells me, he's like, as screams at me, your punishment is 800 yards of up downs. So after practice, in the heat, in Turlock, California, 110 degrees with the cows, I got 800 yards of up downs, which is every 5 yards you run, you drop down in full pads, you pop up like a burpee, and you do that for 800 yards. So how many is that? 160 up downs, 800 yards of running, post-practice, 100-degree heat in full pads. Did I survive? Yes. Was I in shape? Always. Because God helped me that I'm never going to put myself into a situation. Now, I know people look and everybody thinks they're armchair quarterback, but I look at it like, was it inappropriate? Probably. Is every bit of training, especially in college, fundamentally the smartest thing, that we got to be so strategic, strength conditioning scientists? No, a lot of part of this stuff is just the psychology of discomfort, and fuck you, show up in shape. So having not been there, and I can't armchair quarterback it unless I was there and knowing those kids and how it all went down. But I'm pretty sure that there's a bunch of CrossFits, and we got thousands of them, that if you walked in and be like, okay, for the next 60 minutes, we have a max AMRAP of 10 push-ups, 10 burpees. 3, 2, 1, go. How many of those people you think would either self-auto-regulate, self-do this, or be able to make it through? Most people. So I don't know. I mean, I can't say those kids are weak or what the coaches were right or anything, but I'm just saying that as a collegiate athlete, a football player who's expected to be in shape because this is your scholarship and what you were doing, the mere fact that just an hour of burpees and up downs and push-ups and just basically body weight movements is going to give you rhabdo to the point where you have to go in the hospital and create some fucking big social media campaign about it. I'm not buying it. I think those fucking kids were out of shape.
Yeah, and I think going back to John to like the Iowa deal. Remember the back squat deal?
Same thing. So that same thing happened, and you know what I did? I hit them up, got the workout, and you know what we did? We programmed the workout on CrossFit Football.
Yeah,
we had thousands of people do it, and it was like 225 back squat for 10 reps, 1 prowler push, and I think they did it like for 10 rounds. So it was 100 back squats, 10 prowler pushes.
And I think, John, another, you kind of put yourself in the shoes of those athletes, and it was like, here's what probably happened. I fucking played Division I football. These guys probably went out or were going out the last hurrah before training camp starts. They were dehydrated. They were out of shape. They'd been drinking fucking beers all week, and they showed up totally unprepared, and the physiological effects of that stress overtook those handful of guys. What about the other 90 guys on the roster type deal, right?
Well, that, and also if you ask any football player that's played at a high level, been to training camp, whatever, and you ask them, hey, have you ever got worked out or have been in practice or done a workout to the point where you were so sore that you really couldn't bend your arms or legs and your piss looked like root beer? And they'd be like, yeah, numerous times. And you're like, yeah, that's fucking rhabdo. I'm pretty sure I've given myself rhabdo numerous times. It's like what? I just was too scared to fucking say anything. I'd be like, yeah, it's real painful. Let's just go warm up, or I'll get in the ice, or you'll do something, or I'm just going to drink a ton of water because my piss is dark. I think it's just, Ron's going to laugh because he knows Tom Cable. If I came in and told Tom Cable, I can't practice because you gave me rhabdo, Tom Cable would probably remove my nuts with a one fell swoop. And
no doubt.
I've told these guys that we were in a meeting one time, and this guy was complaining about something, and Tom basically took a dictionary and flung it at the kid's head and embedded it in the wall, and he screamed at him, basically fucking, I want you to look for sympathy in there between shit and syphilis. That threw the dude out of the meeting and told him to go down and talk to Steve Edwards or Rogers, who was our manager, and to give up his scholarship and fucking wash jocks instead. Oh, dude, he was the most, the level of fucking maniacal insanity that is Tom Cable, most people would literally I can't even imagine like kids today having that type of coach, but that was the environment in which we played. And like,
All right.
I just don't, I mean, and you know the same deal, man. Like, I just don't have a lot of fucking sympathy for, people that are asked to do a job. I'm told what to do. This is what's going to happen. And then you don't fucking do it. Like,
Right.
I run into people all the time with this shit. I'm like, hey, this is what's expected of you. This is what's going to happen if it doesn't show up. I'm going to show up. Let's see. And 3, 2, 1, go. Let's find out. And then they fucking are surprised. Like, what? Like, fuck you.
Well, I think that, that's to me, I kind of wrote 3 things down as you're talking. One, I think people need to know the details before they start. I mean, what made me sick about the whole thing was the number of fitness professionals, strength coaches, everybody else that jumped on and just wanted to freaking go hang the strength coach, without knowing any of the details, And what I do know is that those kids, like you're talking about, those kids were given a program to do. As soon as the season ended, they were given a program to do until they showed back up that would have got them prepared for whatever they were about to face, And if they were given that and they didn't do it, then there's got to be some accountability there on their part, And so not only that, but then also know what the workout is. And so you look at all the accounts and, it's secondhand, this person told a reporter, this player that's unnamed says all we did was push-ups and sit-ups for an hour or whatever it was, or up-downs for an hour. Well, there's many workouts where if guys weren't doing things right, I'd tell them to do the 10 up-downs and let's go on, In their minds, if you would have asked them after that, they would have said, yeah, all we did was up-downs because Coach Mag had it out for me today. We did a lot of things, up-downs was one of them. And not knowing exactly what the protocol is. When you knew the exact protocol with Iowa, you went out, you did it, and many people did it, and they were just fine.
Yeah, they were fine.
And not knowing what happened there, it really irritates me to hear coaches kind of jump on another coach when that's when we need to rally the troops. That's when we need to kind of protect each other because we've all been in that situation where we've thrown the textbook out the window, the scientific textbook out the window, and we've done motivational tactics or motivational workouts to send a message in some way. Always, there's not a coach out there that doesn't want to protect their athletes, And so I'm, with trainers there, with coaches there, with strength staff there, I can almost bet without knowing the protocol that the protocol wasn't something that they should not have been not able to handle, But you're right. When they don't control the other 22 hours outside of the weight room and they come in and maybe they've drank all night, stayed up all night, freaking didn't do jack for 2 weeks and show up, what? That workout's going to suck.
Yeah. And it should. And it fucking should. Like, that's the problem is that people like, I saw this, and I shouldn't do it. I should delete my Facebook, but somebody tagged me in it and they were like going through, and I basically was like, dude, I don't have any some of these kids showed up out of shape. And this guy was like, well, if that was my kid, I'd be driving up there. And I was like, to do what?
Yeah.
Up. I'm like, well, you're going to drive up there and fucking beat up the coach because your kid is out of shape. I'm like, you know what? Like, there was never a point at which, the way I looked at part of my training, and I'm sure you think about it a lot, is that, why are you training for football? Is it performance? I always had it as survival. Like, part of my thing was I wanted to be as big and strong as I could and, like, put on mass and do all these things so that I could survive the task ahead of me. And whether that be on the field or a guy like Tom Cable or whoever it is, I needed to physically be able to be durable enough and be able to survive this stuff, that whatever comes at me. And if the coach wants us to do push-ups and fucking 800 yards of up downs after practice for, and that shit took me a pretty long amount of time, that right. I'm durable and strong enough and, resilient enough and fucking dumb enough to be able to just be like, I'm never going to give up on, and I'm never going to show this dude weakness. So I'm just going to go fucking do it. And I'm going to go home and be upset about it later.
Right.
But, that's
so, but that was also part of kind of, I just read a few articles about it, and that these were older guys. So new coach coming in, and they wanted to send a message to the coach. So they were doing everything and pushing beyond, I guess, their preparedness in that moment, in that workout.
Right.
So the kids, they were going extra hard, and they were trying to impress the coach and gave themselves rhabdo.
But it doesn't mean that they did or did not do the winter conditioning. But in this instant, in this one moment, they were older guys.
I just have a hard time believing that somebody, because this is the thing. Like, like part of like you build a training volume over a number of years that escalates, and like the progressive overload, like I mean, people always ask like, in the NFL, like, how do people not die from those hits? I would die from those hits. I'm like, well, yeah, because when we were 13 years old or 14 years old, we were playing with other 14-year-olds and we took those hits. And then as you got older and bigger and stronger, the other people got, and the hits got more violent. So then all of a sudden you're 28, 30 years old playing against other 28 or 30-year-old men, and those hits are as violent as you can be, but it's the progressive overloading of time and basically being able to, like, you just don't go from 0 to 100 and you have to take all those steps. So what I have a hard time believing is that established older veteran players in a Division I place like Oregon were actually able to push themselves to the point of rhabdo. And ironically, and I'm never going to fucking say this, but not only was I playing in the NFL, but I competed in the CrossFit Games, then went to training camp for the fucking New England Patriots. Now, if somebody's going to give themselves fucking rhabdo, it would have been me, and I wasn't able to give myself rhabdo. So you're telling me, and I fucking played for not only Tom Cable, but Todd Rice and some of the fucking craziest motherfuckers with Mike Waffle and Steve Mariucci, all these coaches that I played with. I mean, dude, like I just cannot, like, I never saw this happen, and I cannot fathom that all of a sudden in 2016 that these kids are finding some extra gear that they can hit into that are going to allow them to give themselves rhabdomyolysis.
Well, that's my second point that I wrote down is, and I've gone through this even myself with, a couple of my athletes through the years, but the misdiagnosis of rhabdo in the first place, I mean, especially with, you guys all know physicians just as well as I do. And I mean, there's some of the most unfit, uneducated people when it comes to performance and fitness there are. But it's really just levels of creatine kinase, and no matter what, when you go out and you have a workout, there's going to be elevated levels of creatine kinase. And at what point does that become rhabdo is still really uncertain, and so being able to really determine that and diagnose it properly, I think is that, so what happens is your kid goes in, just got done doing a workout. Rhabdo is a hot topic. He's got elevated levels of creatine kinase. He's got rhabdo, and that's what they tell the parents. And all of a sudden it's a news story, and I think that there's got to be more education done with our physicians. I think there's, I went into a situation where, a doctor was essentially kind of doing that. He had seen the elevated levels of creatine kinase. The workout wasn't that hard. We were in the 8th week of the program, and I had to go through step by step and lay out exactly what we did and the progression for that to kind of basically steer them off of making a diagnosis of rhabdo, and it just doesn't, that to me, that's a second part of this. That's an issue.
Well, just to give some perspective. So my last year in Berkeley, I had a offensive line coach, was a guy named Monty Clark, and Monty had played in the NFL for a long time and had played at USC, back in the day, and had been the head coach for the Detroit Lions and had been at Stanford, and kind of came back, and he was an older dude in his 70s, kind of last hurrah, like, they asked him to come and coach offensive line. And I remember one of the guys was complaining about an injury, and Monty looked at him and said, Dick Butkus kicked me in the balls during a game. I was playing against Dick Butkus, and he kicked me square in the balls. And we punted, and I came off, and my balls swole up the size of cantaloupes. They took my pants down, and the doctor actually drained the blood out of both testicles, out of my sack, and he put it into tape used to come in these tape canisters. And they basically filled up 2 tape canisters full of blood while the defense was out there. Basically wrapped him up, put an ace bandage around it. He went out there and didn't miss a play.
Damn.
So like he was like, and this guy was talking about like, this injury or whatever. And Monty told him that story. And I remember like, he kind of like, he got real silent. Then the guy just kind of like just walked away. And I remember like looking and I was like, and I actually asked Monty later, I'm like, you serious? He's like, yeah. He's like, I'd take my fucking pants down and show you the scars where that doctor fucking drained my balls. And he's like, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. I can't remember my fucking wedding or the birth of my kids. I'll remember that doctor fucking basically draining the blood out of my testicles. And I like looked at him and I was like, that's some serious shit. But like, that's like that's to me, like, that's what you do. I mean, fuck, I took a helmet to the leg and I broke my leg, and should have played 17 weeks on that broken leg, because that's what the deal is. Like, if you're at the point, and I'll tell you this, I mean, those guys have kind of fucked themselves, especially in an NFL deal. I mean, for guys that would cause this type of situation. I don't know. It just, to me, I just have a hard time whether, and I agree with Ron, maybe it was misdiagnosed, or maybe these kids just found some extra gear, or, you know, I mean, the other one we found in the CrossFit situation was people on statins, or maybe they were on some medications. You know, I know some people that are on statins are more prevalent to rhabdomyolysis. And on top of it, I think even in the CrossFit deal, they only really had a couple like reported cases of it. So I don't know. It seems like a bunch of witch doctory and a bunch of fucking, you know, witch hunt to me. But it seems like
I think it goes back to, again, just knowing all the details. I mean, you know for a fact that the doctors aren't coming out and saying what the diagnosis is because of, you know, doctor-patient privilege and all those types of things. And, you know, they're going to paint the entire picture for the family, and the family is going to go out oftentimes miseducated and try to say things. So you just don't know the situation. And again, it goes back to me, you know, we have an obligation to make sure that athletes know what they're getting themselves into and preparing properly. That's part of the education process. We have an obligation to not jump on each other, you know. And then the third thing that I wrote down, you know, when you were saying this, was we have an obligation to protect ourselves against ourselves and our coaches, you know. And so, like, if I would have said, John, you know, if I would have said, here's the workout, Tom Cable, we're going to go out there, we're going to run, we're going to do the lift, and you know, we're going to go practice, we're going to lift, and we're going to run 4 gassers. What's the first thing Tom's going to do when the gassers are over?
Oh yeah, we got.
You're going to do more. You're going to do more. You're going to do 8. You're going to do double, because that's just the mentality in that type of environment, you know. And so, you know, if the strength coach did, and I'm not saying he did, but if he went in there and he's like, okay, we're going to send a message, and he put in all this extra work on top of what would have been already planned, knowing that I'm going to send this message, well, then you put coaches out there in that environment also, it's going to get taken to another level, you know. And so, you know, one of the things that I did, you know, is you got to be a master manipulator to be an effective strength coach, in my opinion.
Yeah,
you know,
that's true. And
so, you know, what I would do is the first 4 months in January, when the coaches are out recruiting, you know, it used to be back, you know, when we played, it was freaking mat drill started as soon as you got back.
Sure.
Well, I would go up to the coaches and say, hey, look, guys, you are super busy right now. You're out recruiting. You're traveling all over the country right now. You're just trying to bring people in. Let's not do mat drills. I want you guys around. I want you really involved. Let's not do mat drills until February, you know. But then we're gonna load it up in February. We're gonna go. Well, that gave me all of January to prepare them and do a progressive overload to get them ready for what's about to come, you know. And you would just have to sell it and frame it in a way that the coach was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Well, I don't feel like getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to come in here when I've been traveling on the road all week long, you know. And I think we have an obligation to build that kind of stuff in our workouts, just like we have, you know, if we're going to send message, let's find a way to do it, you know, without programming it in.
So, Ron, I know this is probably going to be a futile exercise, but let's say, you know, circumstantially making some assumptions here. What could they have done differently? Right. I know we don't know the details, so that it's our disclaimer here, but like we made some assumptions. Maybe the kids let's just say it's a little bit of everything. Kids came in a little bit out of shape, right? Let's say they have a 5th gear or found a 6th gear or whatever you want to call it. And then let's see what else was there. So how do you throttle it back? Are there warning signs? Like, you've been there. You've been there firsthand. John's been there firsthand. So what do you think could have been done different? Was this avoidable? I guess I'll let you elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, what I would have done differently possibly is not put him in a charge situation right away. You know, if you put the entire coaching staff that just got there, they're trying to send a message. You got players that are coming off of a season where they didn't perform in years what they've been doing, you know, and they're jacked up and they want to prove themselves. And then you throw a strength staff that just come in that's got to set the tone for the entire offseason when everybody dissipates. You know, they still got to maintain that kind of control and demeanor and perspective and authority. It's such a charged situation.
What I think people are forgetting too is that Oregon's a high motor team. I mean, they are the run and gun, the run and shoot, no huddle, nonstop. I mean, Chip Kelly tried to bring it to the NFL. I mean, just like that has been their culture those guys were recruited into that culture. So I have a hard time believing like if they were a, UT as an example, where you got these 350-pound offensive linemen that are used to running maybe like 45 plays, and maybe like 10 run plays, because if not, they'll all have fucking heart attacks and die. I mean, like you're bringing in like a high motor. I mean, dude, when I played in Philly, it was like that. I mean, we had these like, dude, like, run 6 screens in a row type of stuff. So, I mean, that was the nature of them. And, to have those type of players be able to go out into conditioning and do it, I just like something is either misdiagnosis or something fucked up, because those guys were recruited into that and it wasn't like their other old strength coach was a slouch. That dude was a hammer as well. I mean, as Ron will tell you, the classic move that a program will make so the head coach can buy himself a little bit more breathing room is to fire the strength staff. So like, ooh, we didn't have a good season. It must have been. And what they'll do is use them as sacrificial lamb. They'll fire the strength staff. They'll bring somebody in, and because that'll give them a little more breathing room, hopefully to turn it around. And a lot of times it's never the strength program. Like it's a fucking tactical move. So they whack the dude. They bring in these new guys. Oh yeah, we're going to go in there and change the culture. These dudes were already in a good program. So like, and I'm sure you've been on the other end of that one where you're like,
both. I've been on both sides of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you I'm sure you've gone into schools where you're like, dude, the guy here was a stud. Like, it's just one of those things where the head coach is trying to give himself one more opportunity to not get his head chopped off. And so I don't know. I'm just not buying it. It seems like bullshit to me.
Well, I think the other thing that you mentioned there that often I just got done meeting with one of the United States Olympic Committee team strength coaches the other day, and he's a new strength coach, came in, and of course the last guy did everything wrong. This is a completely different system. And you went in and just said, everything you've been doing sucks. This is, essentially pro athletes. Everything you've been doing sucks. I've got the answer. Here you go. And it's a completely different system. Well, when you do that, I mean, I was using it as a bad example because you always need to blend the systems, at least initially, so that you create buy-in. But this also, is relevant to this conversation in that, let's say, and I know Jimmy's phenomenal. So I know this isn't the case, but let's say Jimmy was just a conditioning guy and did no resistance training, and the new guy is only resistance training and didn't do really much conditioning. Well, if he comes in and he's training them in a completely different type of program where it's all resistance training based, and then you go out and run them, yeah, they're going to be gassed. And yeah, there's going to be elevated levels of creatine kinase. And yeah, they're going to feel like they can't move their arms. And and it's going to be one of those things where, you do, going back to your question on what would you do differently, I'd blend the systems a little bit more in the early phases. I would take them out of charge situations. I'd go small groups, at least for the first week. I'd like to go for the first month, keep the coaches out of it, keep them with just me so I can progressively overload it. And then not only does that give you an opportunity to prepare them properly, and get them back coming off of a break typically, but it also creates a new stimulus going into your second phase of the off season of the winter to get them charged back up to get through those next 4 weeks to spring ball.
I always love too, and you were referencing the Olympic program that the guy, comes in, everybody did, and everything was wrong, nothing was right. I mean, I was in that same situation where we had Eric Cohn was our strength coach at Cal, and then he ends up getting fired, and they bring in Todd Rice, who of course throws everything out. I mean, the entire weight room, we got to do this, and literally came in
just Olympic lifts.
Oh yeah, no, it was snatch, clean, and jerk. I wasn't allowed to bench press. I wasn't allowed to back squat. I could only front squat, snatch, clean, and jerk, and vertical press. So I would have to go down to the RSF and actually do bench press at the student center because he wouldn't fucking allow it. And if you did do that, he would, as Todd's kind of prickly, would fucking verbally assault you with a lot of F-bombs and work on belittling you. So we just figured it was easier. Like we used to actually call him Rice Patty because we felt like we were soldiers. Rice Patties, and we didn't know when the VC were going to pop up and get us. So we were like, dude, how's Rice Patty? I'm like, dude, he's on fucking point, man. You got to look out for him. He's going to shoot. So we'd be like, all right, we're going to go somewhere else. But I mean, like that type of thing is smart in that, you come into a situation, and you have established players. I mean, some of those guys might even be in their 5th year going in, trying to potentially maybe go play in the NFL. And if you come in and throw out everything they've been taught before, I mean, and these are what these guys have bought into, I think you can really run into some problems. And so the idea of blending deals, but.
And by the way, they've won, 4 of the 5 years,
Oh my God. I mean, Oregon,
they've done pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, dude, they have gone in and not only been dominant. I mean, they got Nike money. I mean, dude, they have one of the, and as you know, I mean, one of the nicest facilities in college history. I mean, dude, it's unbelievable. So, I mean, to have veteran guys go in there and have that happen, it just doesn't seem right. And Luke reminded me the other day, one of the guys that played with Trey Thomas made a joke one time. He was like, I don't like that guy. And I was like, why? And he's like, his curl ain't right. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, his hair just doesn't curl right. We don't like it. and it was just a joke that like something was off. And he couldn't explain it, but just something was off about that dude. And I think like this whole thing, when I was looking at the reports, I was like, something's off about this. Like,
Right.
This is either bullshit or we're not getting the whole deal, because doing push-ups and up-downs of just body weight stuff. Now, if they were like, hey, we're doing these guys did 100 reps of 105% of their back squat, just eccentric loads, and they weren't allowed to have any water in 115-degree heat, and we'd been popping what is it, a leave, and I mean, like, there would be something better. But I'm just thinking, like, bodyweight movements, that shouldn't make that happen for guys that are level collegiate players playing in Oregon.
Right. I think, the one thing though, again, that I just go back to is I know Jimmy Radcliffe really well. I know the defensive coordinator that just came in there. I worked for at South Florida. I mean, I know men on both sides of both staffs. I know they're good men. I know they're good coaches, and again, what really upset me about that whole situation was just the number of people that came out of the woodworks on social media and want to talk all big and bad and say all these terrible things about people without the facts and without digging into it and letting it come out and just knowing that they could have been in that situation. Just, let's support each other's, let's find out what it is and let's get better and learn from it. How can we do a better job and have these types of conversations?
Well, it's always easy too to be the hindsight's 2020 armchair quarterback. This is what I would have done. And I'm like, but sadly you're not, and you're on social media complaining about this dude. And I mean, to the point where even people tag me because I think they think that I'm going to jump in and be like, oh, that was wrong. I'm like, no, dude, show up in shape, fucking protect yourself. And like, if those guys were pushing so hard that they gave themselves rhabdo, then they need to fucking learn how to sandbag a little bit too. I mean, like there is and Ron's laughing because there is a unknown code of offensive linemen, right? There's certain ways that offensive linemen sandbag his groups, like the one,
the one guy jump offside so the whole group can walk back and get an extra break.
Or what's called the lineman shuffle. So like if you ever watch offensive linemen, they always run in a group and they shuffle two different drills, and they'll yell, be like, get over there, but yet they all run in like a little group, so that, and if anybody sprints, they're like, dude, I'm gonna kill you, don't sprint. I mean, there's different ways to sandbag for survival, and we do it in training camp. Everybody does it, and like it's the idea they can't fire us all, like kind of deal. So these guys,
and there's even that negotiation in the scrimmage too between D line and O line. We had that, like, it's like, hey, it's the uncle play, uncle, just everybody pretend their best effort, get a breath.
The only problem with that is that there's always the one fucking guy that doesn't do that and look fucking stupid. So like people would always be like, hey, with this, I'm like, I can't do it. You know why? Because you're gonna fucking rope-a-dope me, and then I'm gonna look like an asshole. And funny story. One of my fucking best friends in the world played on another team, and he was a defensive lineman. And I remember during the game, it was towards the end of the game, he like looks at me and he's like, Wellborn, just give me a sack. He's like, dude, this is my contract year. And he looked, and like, it was funny. Like the whole game, he's like, just give me one. And I couldn't do it. There's no fucking way. And I remember like a year later, he's like, dude, if only. And I was like, man, I should have fucking done it. And he's like, would you have really? I'm like, no, I wouldn't have. But I'm telling you, I should have done it, but I wouldn't have done it. There's no way. Like that part of me doesn't exist to be like, But
I went out one time was with Tampa, and so we had Tyoka Jackson, who was All-American in Penn State. We had Warren Sapp. We had Anthony McFarland.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who the other end was.
That would have been Simeon Rice.
Well, no, it was before. It was Marcus Jones, the guy that went to the UFC there.
Yeah.
But then so Monty Kiffin comes to the weight room, and, we're sitting there waiting for the next group, and he's like, I need you guys out there for walkthrough dummies, basically. So I'm out there. I'm at the freaking tight end spot. Rod Marinelli's right there. He's a defensive line coach, and Tyoka doesn't want to practice. I mean, he absolutely doesn't want to be there. Doesn't want to practice. Doesn't want to hear Rod Marinelli talk. The whole deal. And so we're going through this play. I've got Allstott behind me and Work done behind me, and we're running a lead off. A lead, and I have to get the edge off Tyoka. And so I go, I just kind of slow, slow, a little bit jog for me, but slow for him. and I get the edge. Well, Rod just starts blowing him up, right? And starts talking shit on him. So the next, we're doing it again, line back up, do it again. And this time Rod gets, he's like, I want you to fire off harder. And he gets right next to me. And as they snap the ball, he scares the shit out of me. He starts yelling, scares the shit out of me. So I get into Tioka a little bit faster. And that dude just jacks me up, takes me back 5 yards back and throws me into freaking Allstott. So I get jacked up by him. And then I get hit from behind from Allstott. And you're absolutely right. I mean, people need to take plays, but there's always that one guy that freaking acts like an asshole.
Well, I mean, you're giving royalty with Monty Kiffin and Rod Marinelli. I mean, two of the
there's some studs.
Yeah, I mean, geez, I played against. Team. Yeah, no, I mean, I played against Monty Kiffin's defenses for years. I mean, the things that they did, I mean, were pretty good. I mean, those are some of the best, and also Rod Marinelli, who actually coached at Cal as well. I mean, another good one. So. I mean, it's pretty. I was telling my wife the other day. I don't know if you saw, but Sean McDermott is now the head coach for the Dolphins.
Yeah.
And so I told her, I was like, the year 2000, Sean McDermott was
Still,
Andy
right.
Reid.
Yeah.
He was his handmaid, which meant that he followed Andy around and he basically got his meals and made sure everything was good. And he basically, read the announcements and was Andy Reid's handmaid. And we used to call him Mini Reid and fucking talk shit to him all the time. And I told him, like, if you would have told me that 17 years later, and from 2000 to 2017, that guy would go from Andy Reid's handmaid to being a head coach in the NFL, it's a pretty good return on investment.
No doubt.
But the amount of bullshit that you would have to deal with to get to that point. And Sean was always a really cool cat and like a super sharp dude, but like, that's how you cut your deal. I mean, I saw a picture the other day of, it was Bill Parcells walking with LT, and there was a young Bill Belichick who was walking, and like you could see that LT was fucking with him. And like, they showed this picture, and I'm like, dude, you got to remember, I mean, like every one of these coaches at some point, as dude, like they started at the bottom and have built themselves up. I mean, people don't realize the amount of grunt work, and I had to be a regional scout and fucking watch film and cut this and this stuff. I mean, seeing like all the different guys that were different coaches that I remember through the years, seeing them all of a sudden as head coaches and being like, Jesus, I used to fuck with that dude all the time.
Mike Tomlin was quality control that year. Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, I remember what's his name? He's on Monday Night Football, the Raiders guy. He was Gruden. So Gruden was a ball boy at like at Tennessee, and all of a sudden he's like the offensive coordinator at the Eagles, and I can't remember the one of the older guys that had been there a long time comes in and he sees him and he's like, Gruden, what the fuck are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I'm the offensive coordinator. He's like, you were my fucking ball boy at Tennessee, and like this fucking ride. And he's like, Gruden all of a sudden like got real nervous, and he's like, everybody had to start somewhere type of stuff.
Yeah,
so it's
no doubt.
Yeah, but that's what they don't realize about the NFL and coaching especially. It's so like incestuous, and like when you look at the staffs and the people and how they all came up, it's just like everybody gets a job, they hire all their friends, and then when they get a job, they hire their friends. And it's, if you can crack into that thing, it's there for a long time. So it's
I think along that journey too, though, you find yourself being mentored. And I know, Ron, last time we talked on the podcast, you had talked about that was a big thing for you, is just mentoring interns and the value of education in that process. So I guess maybe ping-ponging back and forth between, let's say, what went on with Oregon, understanding coaches' responsibility, and then educating athletes through an athlete's responsibility per se. I mean, as you look back into your role as a mentor, are these the things that you covered with up and coming coaches and guys who would sleep on your couch or whatever, like the interns?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, there's a big thing going on right now, especially, I know Tex, you do a lot of traveling overseas. You all three do, and this as well as I do, that a lot of the European countries, Australia, in terms of science driven training, they're doing maybe a much better job than we are with science driving training. However, a big thing over there is the coaching science, actually learning how to coach people and being able to take that textbook knowledge and apply it. And that's where in the United States, we're so good. We've allocated great resources, and we've really done a good job of being able to learn how to motivate and navigate some of these types of situations. And that's really what it is. I mean, you got to learn. That's why it's such an apprenticeship type of role to be a strength coach or a coach in general, is that you have to see all these various scenarios that you're going to be popping up against. And seeing how coaches handle them and seeing the good and the bad. I mean, I could point to just as many coaches that did the wrong thing And I learned from that as the coaches that did the right thing and how I learned from that as well. And so, yes, to answer your question, I spent a lot of time talking about, here's the set rep scheme. That's the easy part. Give me the back of a napkin and I can write you a workout. That's the easy part. Getting people to buy into it, believe in you, trust you, allow you to lead them. That's where it really takes. That's the art. And that's ultimately what separates coaches that go on and have a successful career from the ones that are just those great technicians that know the science, that know what should be done, but just can't get anybody to do it.
Do you think there's a kind of a disconnect between, with players? I always think too, for me, I was more interested in results. Like if, somebody came in and we put a training program together and I got bigger, faster, stronger, and I saw the results, I didn't really care as much about the personality point. Like, if the guy was a dick, but I was able to get better, then that's all that mattered. Whereas I watched a lot of guys who, almost fought it because they weren't kind of handheld a little bit. And I remember talking to my dad about it once, and he said, I think it was a quote from General Patton that, being a great leader and being a great general is about figuring out how to motivate different people, because everybody has different motivations. He's like, yours is results. He goes, some people, might need, to be hugged or, told they were good or this. And he's like, it's just like raising kids, some kids you coddle, some you kick. And I think as a strength coach, being able to, have almost different styles of motivation for everybody. I guess you just can't always be the hammer. And,
right.
And I think like that idea, especially at a Division I program where, you have all these kids and it's such a high turnover and you're depending on these kids to play and do a good job, that, how do you necessarily balance that? Like that to me is the one thing I think I would fail at, in that, how do you navigate that?
Yeah. You gotta have a great staff. That's the bottom line, and I think, one thing that I talk about, I've talked about this a lot, so, bear with me if you've heard this, but when I hire staff, there's there's the Myers-Briggs personality test. There's all these different personality tests. And one that I give is from Gary Smiley. He was a psychologist. And basically it could put you into 4 categories. You're a lion, you're an otter, you're a beaver, you're a retriever.
I thought we were going to get in like the INTPs and all that. I was going to ask you what your Myers-Briggs was.
No, well, I'm definitely an introvert, but what's great about that is, this test is simplistic, it's quick, it's easy, but I'm telling you, no other tool has given me a better representation of who I'm hiring than this personality test. And so early on in my career, I'm a lion. I'm a guy that's out in front. I like pounding my chest. I'm gonna run 1,000,000 miles an hour, but I'm not gonna be the best with the details. And every one of these has strengths and weaknesses. The beaver, completely detail oriented, has multiple to-do lists, can put everything right where it needs to be, but they're not going to be the person that's out front pounding their chest. Then you got the otter, who's the guy that creates the energy, that's going to dance with the players. It's going to always have a smile on their face. It's going to be singing, could have ran over a freaking cat on the way in, and it's going to, that doesn't affect them. And then you got the retriever that's just the most loyal guy. That's Sean McDermott. When the head coach leaves, nothing changes, and I'm going to, basically you're worried about him telling the boss if something goes wrong, and when early in my career, I thought I had to have a bunch of lions because I'm a lion and I thought I was a good coach, so I hired a bunch of lions, but that doesn't work for the dynamics of a staff. I needed to have that otter. I needed to have that beaver. I needed to have that retriever, because different guys have different motivations, like you said. And, that guy that likes to dance and have fun in the weight room, well, that's not the way that I train, but I need to be able to, at the end of the day, I don't care if he dances and sings every freaking song that comes on, as long as he does the work, so let me put an otter with him that's going to enjoy that, and then they're going to enjoy him. And I think as a coach, as a good coach, you got to know what your strengths and weaknesses are. You got to surround yourself with people that role models, great role models, each of those different types of personality types that people can go to, that feel comfortable going to them, and then trust that process. Trust that you've invested in them. They're going to say the right things. But when you're a leader, when you're a young strength coach, you have to be all those things, because you're not going to get hired unless you can play those roles. But when you become a leader, you need to be what you're comfortable being and then hire what you're not.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I think, sorry.
Next,
You're up.
Yeah, so just kind of checking through the Place Summit website and the schedule you have going on here, and then checking back to your goal of education. And this is definitely one of those messages that I've heard you speak about at Summer Strong and the CSCCA. I think it's kind of cool that now you're not coaching for a team per se, but now you have that opportunity to coach coaches. And a bit, instead of only speaking at 1, 2, 3, 4 clinics, now you have the freedom to then speak at the 8, speak at the 10, and however many you're going to grow each year. So it's kind of cool that you get to continue to spread these messages. So I see here at different types of clinics. So I'd like to kind of highlight, I guess you have 1 2-day clinic here, March 17th, 18th at Play HQ, and then Speed Mastermind, professional development, and several different opportunities for people to learn from. So talk to us, I guess, about each one of those and what value they have.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, basically what we have is we have your typical strength coach, topic-oriented, variety of topics, variety of speakers. We're putting our own twist on it, but we have 6 summits, 3 in the U.S. and 3 internationally. Again, globally is very important to me. And so in the U.S., we have one at the Under Armour headquarters on the 25th of March. We have one at our headquarters, the 17th and 18th of March. And then we have the 4th of March. We have in Indianapolis, outside of Indianapolis at Noblesville High School. That's going on during the same time as the Combine. And again, those are all variety of topics, variety of speakers, bringing in some of the best at each discipline, and keeping things basically current topics, and just making a great resource for coaches to come network and learn. Internationally, we're doing Toronto on the 22nd of April. We're doing the Belfast, Ireland on the 17th of June, and we're doing Australia, Sydney on February 11th of this year. And same thing there. Then what I wanted to do, and this is where I felt a lot of people missed the boat with these conferences, because as a head strength coach, I would go to those, or as an experienced strength coach, maybe I should say, I would go to those conferences if they were convenient for me, and I would totally pick up some information. But the real questions that I was having as somebody that was designing programs was I wanted to deep dive on something that I felt like I was weak on. And so we created these events, these mastermind events, where we're doing speed and multi-directional training out in Denver on the 8th of April. And we got Dan Paff, we have Derek Hansen and Brett Bartholomew and Lauren Lando and Jimmy Radcliffe from Oregon, coming out. And these are some of the best multi-directional speed guys. But Dan Paff, who trains sprinters to run in a straight line, is one of the best when it comes to linear speed development. I want to be able to have a conversation with him about how I can make my athletes faster in a straight line, but realize that they also have to cut right and left, And so, all right, Dan, you don't have a track athlete anymore. You have a freaking running back. How are you training that guy? And so what we did is basically, they're going to present, Dan's going to present on linear speed development, and then everybody's going to write a 12 weeks linear speed development program for their situation, and have that opportunity to have interaction with the other people in the room and with the speaker. And so we created 2 of those. We created a speed multi-directional one, and then we created a professional development one for a lot of the things that we were talking about earlier, that Luke was talking about, where some of this coaching science, these young strength coaches are just getting in the field. What is a good interview skill set? What should you know going into an interview? What should you have prepared? And so we're going to talk about interview skills. We're going to lecture on it, and then you're going to turn around and do a speed dating, and you're going to go around to experienced strength coaches and get shot, freaking peppered with questions, and to see how you handle yourself. We're going to talk about resumes. You're going to go write your resume. And so, it's these workshop type oriented events. And so, again, going back to what you were saying, I mean, I don't know if it's true, 100% true, but I believe it in my heart is that, there's that quote that says a coach, affects more people in one day than most people do in their entire life. If I can coach coaches, I don't know if there's a more noble thing to be doing.
Yeah, it's a trickle down effect, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's kind of what we do. I mean, our whole deal is to save people from themselves. I mean, I think if left up to their own devices, people will make terrible decisions, especially in strength conditioning and performance based. And I mean, even the basic conversation of how do you get strong, which seems fairly intuitive, but is anything but. I mean, when you start talking about linear speed and, people see 1-to-1, they think, oh man, this guy runs so fast. And you're like, and this is a question we ask at, anytime we go out and we teach is can you gauge athleticism off of vertical speed? If you watch somebody run in a straight line, are they athlete? Is Usain Bolt an incredible athlete? Is he athletic? And people are like, of course he's fast. And I'm like, whoa, take this back. Like, what is it about athleticism and people? How do they move? And you start talking about,
take a swimmer out of the pool, see what happens,
Yeah. And it's
like,
in a pool. And these are conversations that people, when you have it with them, all of a sudden light bulbs go on and they start thinking in better directions. And, for so long, and you know this, I mean, the speed development for college and also for the NFL was based off of linear speed. The idea that, you go out and you do all your track stuff, you do your A skips, B skips, C skips, and you do all your high knees and you do all this kind of, vertical type linear running. And then at some point you have to, progress into something where it's a change direction, but it's usually something with like a 5, 10, 5.
Right.
It's very rarely is it like 45s and changes and flips. And, that's all that sport specific. And I think what's been really neat, at least in the last couple of years, is that people are really looking at change of direction and multi-directional speed development as its own, block of training. And I think about our stuff, from college, even, Verstegen working the NFL stuff is, was so linear. And it was like, well, what about the change of direction? It's like, well, you get that, playing or your sport specific training. And I'm like, dude, to me, like foot position and going that stuff, I mean, is, Barry Sanders wasn't the best running back because he was fast in a straight line. Barry Sanders was the best running back because he could literally change direction and do, 90-degree changes on a split deal.
Right.
And it's interesting when they start, trying to take things from like an Olympic or, high level sprint kind of linear speed, and you start putting it with football players. And, I'm sure it'll be an incredible conversation. I definitely would like to be if we had the time to be able to listen to that one and really hear them dispel some myths and really hear those coaches kind of argue a little bit. I mean, because, anytime you put people like that in one room, you're going to have 5 people with 5 very strong personalities and 5 different ways of doing things that all think that they're carry over to the other. So sounds interesting. Sounds amazing.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. And that's just it. And the funny thing is this, is that, this as well as I do. We've had this conversation off camera as well, is that when you are an expert or when you do have a high level of knowledge in this area, you also realize that you're just now starting to get to the point where you're asking the right questions and you're actually at a point where you can really learn, and so getting into a room with those guys, even though they are some strong personalities and they do have conviction in what they're doing, they're also some of the most open-minded guys there are in terms of trying to challenge their ideals to strengthen what they believe, and it's that to me is going to be the most exciting thing about it.
No, it's that's incredible, because then you basically get to be with other people that are big thinkers, and hopefully you get to take something, which is actually the opposite of most of the powerlifting and Olympic lifting coaches I've been around, where they know everything and nobody has anything to contribute. So like when people always ask me, they're like, oh, what do you think about so and so and this? And I'm like, dude, I think there's more than one way to do it, but unfortunately a lot of people disagree on that. And I always go back to my early training days with the old man in the garage, George Zangus, where there was George's way and no other way ever made any sense. And I remember telling him one time, being like, you don't think there's other ways to do this? And he's like, no, this is the only way to do it. And unfortunately there's so many different ways, and there's so many different approaches that people have, that not only strength development, but speed and power. And certain people the big thing we've been working on now is with velocity-based training. And, you can go back and read Fred Hatfield, with compensatory acceleration, Fred talking about, the ability to move from point A to point B with a heavy barbell, should be able to do this. So it's almost as if everything comes in cycles and things start kind of, this is sexy again. And, the fact that, most of the questions we get are about velocity-based training now, I'm like, dude, this is this is the point we're at where people are looking at it and thinking like, how do I develop speed and power in the weight room, which has always been really kind of my pet for everything I walked into. It just wasn't about being strong, but could you display that in such a way? So
right.
I think it's
but yeah, Ron, you hit it on the head. The point at which you could really learn. So just as a younger generation strength coach, I had to get to that point in which I could really learn. And I mean, this is sooner rather than later, almost to the point at Summer Strong, meeting you and talking to a lot of the guys there. And then like our string of podcasts where we had like Kia Basso and all these great guys come in, it was finding connections to principle-based training and then really diving into what specifically you're training for. And when John speaks of velocity-based training, speaking and meeting Brian Mann at NSCA, that's a guy I'm definitely going to get to learn a lot from. But at the same point, I had to get to a base level in which now I'm really ready to learn. So I think a lot of coaches, right, they jump on the sexy stuff, or they jump on many different trains to the point, and they're neglecting the principles. They're neglecting like that base level in which you learn your first 2 years just holding the clipboard, right?
Right.
And this,
but Tex, isn't that like just everything? I mean, we deal with that with strength training all the time. I mean, I get people ask me, I got a question the other day about a deadlift setup, and the guy was like, what do you think about this and this? And I was like, great, no problem. What's your deadlift? And the guy's like, well, I deadlift 300 pounds. I was like, well, when you be strong enough to have this type of conversation. I mean, there's 15-year-old girls in Texas that are state powerlifting champions that deadlift way over 300 pounds, and you are a 28-year-old adult male that's been training and only deadlift 300 pounds. Do you think it's the setup? Does it really fucking matter? I mean, are you getting lost in the minutia? And I think that was an interesting thing. Like, are you strong enough to have a conversation about these kind of minutia? But I mean, even with the strength stuff, or even, with strength coaching, people want to have these velocity-based training. And I'm like, great. Can you move fast? Do you have good enough technique to be able to have you rehearsed your technique in a barbell back squat to the point where that every rep is picture perfect the same, so that you can actually look and say, okay, I was faster on that one. What did I do? Was it a loss in technique? What's the deviation? Why am I not moving as fast? So now we're talking about, is the barbell too heavy? Well, maybe, but if your technique's not on. So it's like, I always wonder, and that's such a great point about being strong enough for having a knowledge base to be able to have an intelligent conversation, have gone through the trials and tribulations and tried all the different things, like to be able to actually say, hey, this works and what doesn't, which isn't what people do these days. People are either like instantly in one camp and this is right and this is wrong without ever using anything else.
Yeah, that's the thing that's probably one of the, going back to what we were talking about earlier with the interns, one of the biggest things that I stress to them is be your own guinea pig, try everything. And until you really understand it, you can't have a conversation about it. You don't really know and understand it. And you shouldn't negate it, because ultimately you never know, because so much of what we do is situational, that it's a tool for the toolbox. You never know when you're going to be able to go in and pull that tool out and be able to handle or address a specific situation. And you better have a pretty good understanding of it, if for no other reason, to be able to defend what you're doing versus what you think that you shouldn't be doing, and I think that so much, that's the problem, I think, with academia in general, is that you come out and it's like, you got a bunch of people that never lifted a weight in their life telling you how to lift weights, and here's all the book knowledge to say this is the way it should be done. Now go do it, and you're a professional, you're credentialed, and it's like that. You're just starting the process. You're just starting that process, and now shut your mouth, open your ears, freaking just do for lots of years, and then ask a million questions. And then you'll end up getting to a point to where you might actually have an original thought.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah. That base level of strength that we talk about developing, I guess, with the novice athlete, to the point where we can really have some fun in training, not just skipping to the fun stuff. Selfishly as a coach, I think one of our big missions this year for 2017 as Power Athlete is to really steer people towards a base level of knowledge,
right,
which they can start to begin and wrap their head around the complexity that is the science of strength and conditioning. It's a mix of the science as well as then managing the athlete from like the mental side of things and motivating the proper motivation.
Ron, you made a good point earlier about wanting to have a big impact globally. Is it something that you've seen? Because I know we've run into this when we've taught a lot of global seminars. The guys that are what I would consider or really tout themselves as strength and conditioning coaches are more on the science side. Very few of them really are guys that were hey, I was big into the barbell stuff. I was big into training. This is what I've done. They've kind of branched in. I mean, we've had over the years these guys show up to our seminars with these credentials, and I'm looking at this dude being like, have this dude, like, what was your background? Do you even lift weights?
Right.
So it was like this, there was almost this, and I had one guy be like, oh, this is, based in the lab, and, we're sports scientists. And I'm like, dude, I don't know how it is in your country, but in our country as a strength coach, if you came into some of the environments that I played in, you would, regardless of how knowledgeable you think you might be or anything that you might have, you will get zero buy-in. And he's like, well, and the guy kind of was like, well, it's not like this country in America is very different. And I remember thinking, like, at some point, if you're going to train athletes, you have to look like you do this stuff, or at least have bought in. I mean, it's kind of like the doctor thing. You go in and the doctor's out of shape, and he's talking to you about getting in shape as he's smoking a cigarette and, walking. And I know that's pretty important as, Kaz, who was our, assistant at KC, who's now at Baylor.
Right.
This was on all of his dudes, they all got to train. They all got to be in shape. I mean, I'll throw them into, any workout at any point, and they better be able to hang. And if they can't, they don't have a job here.
Right.
And,
Well, I think, obviously you don't want to make it a vanity project, and that's not the only way that, because there's plenty of people that look the part that don't know how to coach either. But at the same time, I think, one of the things that I also would tell those interns is that if you didn't compete, I don't think to be a great strength coach, that you have had to have played the sport that you're working with. You can be a good strength coach at any, if I'm a great football strength coach, but I would be a good basketball strength coach because I never played the sport. I don't really understand all the ins and outs. I don't know what goes into preparing for that. I don't know what it means to be on the line, having to sink a freaking free throw to win the game. I don't understand that. But likewise, you don't understand what it's like to play in front of 100,000 people and, play a team sport and freaking run into a freaking car accident 20 times. You don't get that. And so I think these strength coaches that have not competed, I think if you want to be great, go compete first, and then then focus your attention on the sport that you competed in. Now, that said, I think there's plenty of people that can learn and contribute, but I think that's the difference. And so I don't know if you necessarily have to be freaking the Greek god, because bottom line, at 60 years old, I'm not going to look like a Greek god.
No, that's bullshit.
But at the same time,
there'll be a magic pill by then. I firmly believe that some dude in the lab right now is like going to develop some pill that you take that just.
I hope that's me, because I'm
instantly you're shredded and you never had to do anything. You're like, I don't know, I just take this pill every morning and I just am shredded.
But I think, if you are a strength coach, you are listening to this, and if you've never competed, if you've just lifted weights before, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. You need to compete. You need to fully understand what it means to, if you're going to train athletes, if you're going to train people for bodybuilding or things like that, or I think that you have an opportunity. And I think if you're a young coach and you didn't play college ball or you didn't do whatever, I think go compete in a powerlifting competition. Go compete in an Olympic lifting competition. Go CrossFit or Spartan races, or find something that you're setting a goal, you're working towards it, and then you have to put yourself out there and on the line.
Yeah, I mean, the potential for failure, and you always think, like, at least for me, I mean, some of my best learning experiences came out of failure, and actually a fear of failure. So if you've never put yourself in a situation of failure, then how can you really empathize and really kind of connect with those athletes? So it's a good point.
Right.
So.
Well, I mean, Tex, we're at like 2 hours. And I think
it feels like 5 minutes.
Harry's got a class showing up or something here.
Yeah, people are showing up with
forgive me, Power Athlete Nation. I've sinned. We forgot to mention that this is the premier podcast in strength and conditioning.
No, Kelly
it's
just
implied at this point.
Oh, is it implied?
Well, we're only the premier podcast in strength and conditioning because we have the premier guests.
Fair enough. Yes, guys like Ron, and I guess
Appreciate
to kind of wrap this up, and continue on dogpile on what Tex was saying. That's our mission for 2017 is to empower athletes to give them, or coaches to give them platform through our Power Athlete Academy project. And I think you and Tex have been talking about that, but it's our
That's
way.
awesome, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's our way to try and accelerate the development of that base level of knowledge, right?
Yeah,
So,
and really to work with like the business owner coach who you can't afford to go basically sleep on Raf's couch for 3 months or go do football internships unpaid for 2 freaking years just for the opportunity.
Ron and Ruiz are buddies.
I know. That's why I dropped the name. But
I told Tex he's the freaking Yoda of strength and conditioning. Right?
He is. He is a Yoda of strength and conditioning. You don't know if he's 50 or if he's 20.
Exactly.
But when we were talking about an hour ago, when we were talking about, coaches being able to balance the science and this, and I'm like, nobody was better at realizing when somebody needed to be kicked in the balls than Ruiz. And the Ruiz is truly a master of knowing when to push and when to pull on people. So it's and anybody gets a chance to run into Raw, you'll know what I mean. And you guys
just
are
stay away from the water. That's all I recommend.
Tex, you're not a water-based person, but I think Ruiz looked at you and thought, you know what, I'm going to drown this motherfucker.
Or hit him with a Filipino fighting stick.
Yeah.
that's happened. That has happened.
I love that silly bastard.
But I do want to highlight just Ron's new Pass the Mic. So he had one of my old mentors, Donnie Mabe, on there. And so, Ron, you got a new Facebook page just to focus on coaches and then Pass the Mic. So kind of tell us about that and really where to direct our audience.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. Well, I got a lot of things going. I mean, Iron Game Chalk Talk's going into its 5th year where I interview strength coaches from all over the world. And, I needed to find some other channels or avenues to do some things. One, I started to ask Coach Mac just so I can try to alleviate some of the questions that I get. I get dozens of questions every day. And this is just an easy way for me to get online and answer them real quick. Pass the Mic is a way for me to get repeat guests from Iron Game Chalk Talk on for you to ask them questions. And so if you've not followed the show, I'd encourage you to check it out on iTunes. I do the Ask Coach Mac and the Pass the Mics live on Facebook Live, and reached my max on my profile page or whatever, so I had to create a fan page, which I did not want to necessarily do, but I guess it's part of the game. And so, yeah, just at Ron McKeefery is where I'm at on all social media. Check that out, and appreciate it, man.
Well, Ron, hey, thanks for taking the time to join us on the premier podcast in strength and conditioning, in case you didn't know.
Awesome.
But Tex, we got anything else we wanted to cover? I mean, we got to cross paths and check out the what you got going over on Play HQ. We got to find our way out there, John.
Absolutely.
Are you coming to Summer Strong?
I'll be down there, of course, and hopefully we can connect before that.
Yeah, no, we were out there, and so we're definitely going to pack up and we're all going to.
I think you sold me on the Speed Mastermind Clinic.
Yeah, it's going to be a sweet one.
Nothing I enjoy more than learning from people that the best in the biz. So I may. John, you interested in going up to Colorado in April?
The Tex, what you need is a shirt, right? And I'm just telling you, just show up with a shirt. #dorsiflexion. That's it.
I'll make a lot of friends.
Just sit in the front row. Yeah, sleeveless crop top. Just #dorsiflexion. And
just the spandex and like some really expensive cleats.
Maybe
that would take it too far.
All right, cool.
All right, guys. So let's wrap it up. Ron, again, thanks again, guys. Check out Ron. Check out everything he's got going on. And if you don't know, now you know. Ron's the man.
Awesome.
Coach, thanks a bunch, man. All right, Tex.
Thanks so much, guys. Freaking always a lot of fun. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
See you
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
Now it's time for you to empower your performance. Find Coach McKeefery on his website, www.ronmckeefery.com, and take full advantage of the resources provided. His podcast, Iron Game Chalk Talk, is no premier podcast in strength conditioning, but it is quickly becoming one of the most popular in the field. You can check that out on his website as well. And don't forget, Power Athlete Nation, school is now in session. Head to powerathletehq.com/academy to get signed up for the Power Athlete Academy. Investing in your education is the responsibility of every coach, period. So you can either sit back and try and sort through the internet pseudoscience, or you can break a mental sweat with this no bullshit resource. It's not a sales pitch, it's just some friendly encouragement to suck less every day. Until next time, bye!